Another year has ended, another one has started, another opportunity to grow and evolve as a person. 2017 was quite hectic.
Oh!
I got a lot of things done, got my degree, grew this YouTube channel, started this podcast, and I made many other revelations about life in general.
Maximum effort.
So, this video is about the lessons I've learned, the life lessons I learned in 2017. Actually, I learned these lessons over the course of previous years already, but it's still a great idea to remind yourself these, and I think like these lessons, they became more embedded into my mind this year in particular.
At my signal, unleash hell.
So, let's begin with the first and the most fundamental idea I want you to adopt as your life's philosophy. I think it should be the core belief of every human being. The first lesson, I know nothing. It's the Socratic paradox. I know one thing, and that is that I know nothing. What it basically means is that you should always stay humble and remain a lifelong learner. You can never be 100% sure of anything. You can never be sure that you're right. You can never say that you know it all.
I know how to do it.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
There's always gonna be someone who's smarter than you, who's better looking than you, who's richer, who's stronger, and who has a bigger ego. So, it doesn't matter. You have to maintain the beginner's mind until the very end.
You understand me?
And what's more, if you think that you're right in some way, then you're immediately leaving yourself vulnerable to failure. If you have the arrogance to think that you've reached enough mastery or knowledge about something, then that's the moment you immediately begin to make mistakes. You start to miss your own shortcomings, and you fall victim to your own cognitive biases. I think like you should always feel like a small imposter, to feel that you don't deserve to be where you're at.
What an idiot!
Because you cannot ever be sure that you do deserve it, or that you're correct about something.
Good!
You definitely want to have strong beliefs and convictions, but at the same time, you don't never want to become too attached to them, to simply start believing something so much that you block out all other criticism.
Good! More for me and you.
In fact, there is no such thing as being correct. Whether or not something's good or bad depends on the context and the overall situation. Which brings me to the second lesson that I learned. Avoid all absolutes. Never say never. Never say that you're gonna be doing something for the rest of your life. Never think that things will remain the same as they are right now. Never make definite claims about anything. Absolute statements also leave you vulnerable to the ebbs and flows of life. You as a person change, as does the world around you. They can also make you less congruent and guide you away from your true purpose. Instead, you have to be like water, like Bruce Lee.
I said empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water.
Which brings me to the third lesson that I learned. The greatest strength is vulnerability. I'm gonna use the idea of anti-fragility to explain it. Fragile things break under pressure. Resilient things resist and stay the same. Anti-fragile things adapt and get better. Like in the example of being like water, you have to constantly adapt to the changing circumstances.
Now water can flow or it can crash.
This requires you to be vulnerable and open about your weaknesses. Fragility is embedded into anti-fragility. You have to first get weaker before you can get stronger.
This is a trick.
The reason you build muscle is that you're tearing them down at first before you can grow. Learning something new requires you to first admit that you know nothing. When it comes to relationships, then the same principle applies. You have to be vulnerable first before others could trust you and be vulnerable themselves. When you're trying to grow as a person, then you have to be honest about yourself and your behavior. Which brings me to the fourth lesson that I learned. Double down on extreme ownership. If you don't know, then extreme ownership is Jocko Willink's and Leif Babin's idea of taking responsibility for everything in your world.
Take ownership of everything in your world, the good and the bad.
Before 2017, I had already got my health in check, good habits, my financial situation was quite fine, and I was following my purpose. But the more and more I started to use this kind of philosophy of taking extreme ownership, then the more I realized that there are so many more things to take responsibility for.
Take ownership of your mistakes, take ownership of your shortfalls, take ownership of your problems, and then take ownership of the solutions that will get those problems solved.
If someone in my close family gets cancer or some other type of very deadly disease, then it's my fault. It's my fault because I obviously didn't educate them enough. If some of my coaching clients doesn't get the results that they want, then it's also my fault. It's not because they're lazy, but because I failed to teach them.
And that's what leadership is. It's not about accountability. It's about leading and getting them to lead themselves and getting them to take ownership of things.
Extreme ownership has to be taken to the extreme. It would be so selfish to not take advantage of it, to not double down on your own personal development, because it would be such a waste.
Lead yourself and your team and the people in your life. Lead them all to victory.
Which brings me to the fifth lesson I learned. Prepare for the future today. The year 2017 was very familiar. 2018 is also gonna be very familiar. 2020 will mark the first significant changes in culture and society. And in 2030, the world will be drastically changed. I'm talking about biotech, AI, virtual reality, biohacking, genetic engineering, technological implants, the blockchain, space travel, and things beyond our current imagination. The world is changing, and you as a person have to change with it. Whether you like it or not is irrelevant, because it's gonna happen anyway. Learn about blockchain and cryptocurrencies, because it's the finance of the future. Start taking your health more seriously, because people are gonna exponentially increase their lifespan. Make some investments in your education and prepare for the future today.
Study.
Which brings me to the sixth lesson that I learned. Appreciate the present. There's so much to learn from everything, whether that be your past failures, other people who you hate, your own ignorance, or even suffering.
Do you understand me?
You can learn from the smartest person in the room, and you can learn from the stupidest person in the room. Just make sure you're neither of them.
You're even dumber than you look.
Everything is a matter of perspective, and you can learn to see the good in everything. That's why you have to be grateful for whatever present circumstances you find yourself in, even if you're going through difficult times, because tough times don't last, but tough people do. Which brings me to the seventh lesson that I learned. Optimize one thing at a time. Whether that be developing cardiovascular fitness, building your business, learning new skills, or improving something else. If you want to be this lifelong learner, then you should still put the knowledge that you gained into practice. However, you don't want to be doing it all at once. Instead, you should attain this Jedi-like concentration and focus on building something one thing at a time.
The ability to focus will be the superpower of the 21st century.
Which brings me to the eighth lesson that I learned. Work smarter, not harder. You need to work hard and long hours to reach your goals. However, working hard shouldn't be your main focus. Working hard can only get you to a certain point, because eventually you'll still run out of energy. Working smarter allows you to get more results with less effort. It's actually a way of staying humble and taking extreme ownership. You need humility to take a look at what you're doing and realize that just grinding through isn't enough. You need to realize that you're wrong, and you need to learn how to optimize, how to make it more efficient. Working smarter is a constant process of trying to pull the carpet underneath your own feet, to criticize your actions and to try new things.
Challenge accepted.
Which brings me to the ninth lesson that I learned. Constantly assess and challenge yourself. This doesn't apply just to your goals and success. It applies to you as a person in general. If you have the courage to admit that you know nothing, then you should also have enough humility to acknowledge the possibility that your self-identity is also false. No matter who you are or whatever you've accomplished in the past, chances are that what you're doing or what you're trying to accomplish may be completely false.
Oh, bullshit!
Like I said earlier, this small sense of the imposter syndrome, it can be very useful in challenging your own beliefs. Even if you feel deep down inside that what you're doing is the right thing to do, then you should still leave some room for the possibility that you're wrong, that you're actually doing the opposite. Which brings me to the 10th lesson that I learned. Shed your own skin. You have to constantly keep reinventing yourself. What got you to this point may not be what's going to take you where you want to get. Every time you're forced to admit your inadequacies, every time you're forced to bite your own tail, every time you're forced to reveal your weaknesses, every time you're forced to take extreme ownership, you're shedding your skin and killing some parts of yourself. Life itself is a process of dying several times and then being reborn into something new. It symbolizes the Ouroboros, the snake biting its own tail, and it's also the hero's journey of your self-identity. Whether or not it happens towards the positive or negative depends on the choices we make and how we interpret those changes. And there we have it. These are the most insightful lessons that I learned in the year 2017. Rest assured that 2018 is gonna be even more awesome.
Challenge accepted.
And that's what I want you to do as well, to maintain the beginner's mind and to keep learning and improving yourself. Body-mind empowerment.
Get stronger, faster, smarter, quicker, friendlier, more helpful, more driven.
But other than that, click the like, subscribe, notification bell as well. Like always, thanks for watching. My name is Seam. Stay learning. Stay empowered.
Everything the buddy needs.
Control your mind.